Hello, welcome to VR Roundtable, episode 115. My name is Gary, and joining me, as always, is Anthony, Steve, and Chris. We're here to talk about VR news and games for the next hour and a half or so, maybe 2 hours. Sometimes lately we've been going a little bit longer, so maybe we'll be here a little bit longer. But thank you to everybody joining us in chat as well. Feel free to comment or ask us any questions. And also, we do have Super Chat open on YouTube as well while we do the live show. So if anybody feels like donating anything, that would be great too. But we don't expect it, and there's no need for you to do it. Any money that is donated is obviously welcomed, and we do use that for purchasing games we don't get keys for, so we can talk about them on future shows. But that's pretty much it. So let's go around to everyone. Chris, how are you this week?
I'm doing good. Just continuing working on our snowball game. We actually got multiplayer working this week, so we took it to our local college QA last night and had like roughly 30 people try it. And some people it was their first VR game and they loved it. So it's fun. It's fun to develop for VR, I think.
That's got to be like the moment where you've been working on this game behind the scenes and then you get to sort of show it to people. I suppose that's quite satisfying in some ways. Did you get some good feedback from that as well?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of like mixed feedback because it's a physics-based game, so there's all these wonky stuff with throwing and everything. But I think we'll get it there.
Yeah,
it was fun. Yeah.
awesome. Okay, Steve, how are you this week?
I am good. Not much to report. Pretty average week.
Good stuff. Okay, Anthony, how about you? You've been working all week on your VR 365 show as usual, so you're well up on the ball in terms of VR news and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I can do it in my sleep, man. No. Exciting news this week, well, I guess kind of, is I think I'm going to be going to GDC. I'm about like 98% sure. I got to book a hotel today, actually. But yeah, I'm super excited for that because one of the things I've mentioned is I've only tried 4 headsets in my entire life. PlayStation VR, original Rift, original Vive, and then Oculus Go. That's it. I've never tried anything else. And so I'm hoping when I go to GDC, like at different demos and stuff, maybe get lucky and try like some of the different headsets I've never tried.
Pimax isn't going to be at GDC, but they're going to be at GTC, which is in the same place. It's technically a different show, but maybe try to track them down while you're there on the property and see. That would be one to try. And then, of course, any of the stuff that's not released, like the Varjo, or the HP Copper, or definitely the unreleased stuff.
Yeah, it's going to be a game of like what line is the shortest and that type of thing,
Yeah. Looking forward. We hope to get some of your impressions on that with on VR Roundtable as well. That would be great. And I'll try to hide my jealousy very much as I try to hide it with Steve and his Pimax. But let's get straight on to the news now. So the first little news story we've got down here is Oculus. It's to do with Oculus yet again, and this is to do with Quest titles. Now, they came out with a blog post earlier on this week where they were talking about the fact that the Oculus Quest is probably going to have a lot more stringent and a higher bar in order to get your game onto that kind of platform. So they did this, and one of the comments on this blog post, they said, we've set a high bar for content quality on Quest, higher than we've ever enforced before, in order to build a platform where everyone has confidence in the quality of the titles they're buying, and developers know that their investment has a strong chance of success. So I think from all accounts, we've had the Oculus Rift on a PC platform for obviously, almost 3 years now, and it's always been a semi-curated kind of content store in terms of you have to pass certain guidelines in order to get your game on there, which makes sense. But there's always been a battle with all of this stuff because the PC platform is inherently open. It's always been open, and trying to get people to subscribe to some kind of platform on this inherently open platform is difficult. Steam have done it. Very successfully, but now other people are trying to do it as well. And it makes sense for Oculus to do this on PC to a certain extent, but you are always going to be battling against this perception that PC should be open, and it always should have this open nature. With the Quest, in my opinion, they are going down a different path, and they're under no obligation to make that platform. It's a console. I mean, it really is a console. They're under no obligation to make that open, so they're not doing that. And again, I think it makes sense for them to do that. There's a lot to say on this in some ways, because it's still going against. You've got the Oculus Rift, which is primarily a PC headset, and a lot of people that are interested in that are also interested in the Oculus Quest as well. And I suppose making that transition from an inherently open platform over to a closed platform with such a stark difference is probably going to be a difficult pill for some people to swallow. But let me go over to Anthony first on this one. What do you think? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think one of the reasons that we're seeing this is Oculus has to be a bit concerned that there is going to be an avalanche of software that's coming to the Quest. And they don't want people to be overwhelmed in the very beginning. And like you said, this is kind of a console. This is almost like Sony launching a PlayStation Vita, or Nintendo when they originally launched the Nintendo Switch. You're launching a new product, and you want to have a nice stream of software titles that come to that product, but you don't want to start on day one and have 300 games available. It's not a good way to do it, because when people are jumping aboard a brand new platform, you want to have like 25 games like on the first day. I don't think you want to have like 110 games. You want to have a good selection of games, but you don't want to overwhelm people right away. And then you want to have a steady flow of games. And we hear all the time, this developer is making 2 Quest games. This developer is making 2 Quest games. This developer is making a Quest game. This developer, we're hearing it all the time from all kinds of different people. Everybody and their mom is making a Quest game. And it's understandable, because this is where the excitement is. This is where the hype is. This is where a lot of people believe like the second burst of VR is going to happen with this. And I think it's a good idea. They might back away off of this when we're like a year or so in and things have kind of settled out and they got a nice stream of content and they're not overwhelming people with too many games.
Yeah, the one point I wanted to make is when I first heard this news story is that it made perfect sense from my point of view in terms of like the Oculus Quest is so it's tied to its hardware, so you've only got a very limited processing power on this headset and this kind of stuff. It makes sense that they want to curate the kind of content that's on there because they need to ensure it's running at a certain frame rate and the graphical fidelity is a certain level as well. Very similar to PSVR, again, a console based VR headset. So I think it makes perfect sense for them to do all of these things. But there is obviously a risk in terms of developers getting their game on this platform if Oculus choose not to do that kind of thing. So that is, I suppose, the primary concern. Chris, what do you think of this?
Yeah, I think it's definitely the right thing to do. When I saw this, I was pretty happy, just because I don't want them to screw this up, and I don't want there to be some of these crappy games that have been announced or that we've reviewed in the past to just come out on Quest and everyone's like, wow, VR sucks. Because back in the original days of the Vive and everything, I had my friend who was just like, there's no games for VR, they all suck. And that was kind of true back then, but he's never really gotten back into VR since then. So you don't want to ruin that first impression for anybody. I think it's a really good opportunity for developers. I know me and my friends are going to try to apply for this this thing. So basically you have to make like a 3-slide presentation of your concept and send it to Oculus early March, sometime when they open that up. And if they approve it, then you get access to like a bunch of exclusive developer resources and like a direct Oculus contact and all this stuff. So we're gonna see if we can get some of that, and if we could, we'd be like, man, let's make this game. Let's work on it over the summer or something. Let's actually make it real. So I think it just gives developers so much more clarity. They'll be like, okay, Oculus likes my game. Like, that's awesome. Let's actually make this thing like really good. So I think it kind of hypes everybody up. I know it hyped up my team too. So let's fingers crossed that we get approved through this first obstacle here. But
yeah, Steve, what are your thoughts on this?
Not too expansive. I guess I agree with the curation, a stricter curation. I've always said that VR has a content problem. And I think there are two approaches to this. We see that with Steam and we see that with Oculus. I've heard a lot of people say that VR is gimmicky and that there are no good games or no expansive games. And I think cutting out some of that noise is probably good, because there is a ton of crap on Steam. And so I guess what I'm saying is I agree with Oculus on this. It remains to be seen just how strict they are or how curated they will become. And maybe the good thing about VR is that a lot of developers are communicative in places like Reddit and such. So if Oculus is somehow too strict, I'd imagine we'd be hearing about it when that time comes. So it'll be interesting to keep your eye on that aspect of it. But I think someone that is new to VR, that doesn't have a PC, that is strapping an Oculus Go on for the first time, there being a breath of quality is probably pretty important to the initial impression and for the lasting experience. After launch, and to Anthony's point, it'll be more important, I think, than the quality of games specifically, but for there to be a steady stream of decent to great content. We don't want anybody to take their Quest and put it back in its box, put it in the closet, or put it up for sale on Craigslist. We want them to keep getting it out so that software attach ratios remain high, which keep this VR train moving forward. So as of now, I'll go ahead and give Oculus a thumbs up on this news until we see more.
Yeah, I do agree with that. And I guess your point that you made earlier, Steve, is to do with the fact we don't know how stringent and how strict they're going to be on these guidelines or anything like that. So if they're turning away developers that have made absolutely valid and perfectly fine games, which for the Oculus Quest, which for whatever reason they're refusing to add on to their store, then I suppose we could have a problem. At this point, this is just the sensible way for them to go, in my opinion. I think they had to go this route. They've not really got a choice with this particular device. Okay, well, let's go on to the next news story. And this is something we touched on last week. When we did last week's episode of VR Roundtable, the HoloLens 2 was being announced. And we did try to touch on some of the things during the show last week. But we've got a lot more details this week, so let's get into this. The HoloLens 2 now, it's reported to have sort of more than two times the field of view, which it does have. And Alex Kipman clarified on Twitter that it's got it's 52 degrees field of view horizontally, which equates to 43 degrees diagonally. That was 52 degrees diagonally. I've made a mistake on the notes. 43 degrees horizontal, 29 degrees vertical. We'll get on to something a little bit later on with what Road to VR reported on with this, which I think is valid and worth mentioning later on with the field of view. There's a lot of specs here, and I think we went through some of them last episode, but it's running on a Snapdragon 850. It's got sort of 2 to 3 hour battery life, improved hand tracking performance, far more, you don't just have the pinch to zoom or anything like that. You've got far more recognition in terms of hand tracking. It's got a 3:2 aspect ratio as opposed to the original HoloLens at 16:9. So it's slightly taller, and it fits over glasses. And there's lots of things to talk about this. I'll leave a few for people to mention. Steve, I'll go back to you first on the HoloLens 2. I know that this is sort of, because we did mention it last week and we sort of covered some of this. What have you got anything to add, because you weren't on last week's show?
Not too much. They're focusing. So if you've been watching or listening to VR Roundtable for a while, you'll kind of maybe remember when we're talking HoloLens and AR that I personally always said that I think the enterprise aspect of it, for people in manufacturing, people, to have this serve as a utility. And maybe I just don't recollect when the original HoloLens released, but Microsoft seems to be really pushing that manufacturing and enterprise aspect of the device. A lot of the videos, I'm showing some of them now on the video stream, but a lot of the videos and promotional content they have and partners and people they're showing talk about the device is in that aspect. And I stand behind I guess with this verification, so to speak, like that, I think that is where the future of AR is, and that's where the immediate value is right now. The only thing I'm seeing is what they're showing on these videos and some of these capabilities is very difficult to develop. I'm in a position to, that I would like to find a way to purchase a HoloLens and deploy it on a project or deploy it to some of the people in my company's operation where I create or I engineer something, or, I put in new manufacturing equipment. And when I'm training them how to use this equipment before I run off to the next project, a tool like this would be incredibly helpful. The problem is, and it's not spending the $5,000. I could spend $5,000, get a HoloLens 2, but I don't have a set of development tools. I don't have someone that's going to create the AR application or even create an AR tool set, an SDK of sorts, so that I can go in and create the AR application. So I think there's tons and tons of value and utility here. I think this technology is no question going to be a big part of the future of computing. But I still see it, with that frame of mind, I still see it as a long way off, in that there just isn't. There seems to be a missing gap between me, the end user who in a business sense has the money to buy this, and something that I can actually effectively do with it. And some people in chat are saying get Visual Studio and Unity. And yes, if I became a developer, and that's sort of my point, is if I go buy a Fitbit or an Apple Watch, the tool set is there for the end user to use. Here, this is still sort of this is almost being treated like a dev kit. I know they're calling it enterprise, but it's still very much dev kit days, where the tool set isn't very large and vast for the end users to use yet. And I know that's where it is. And I'm not saying that it shouldn't be at this stage or that it should be further along, but, just kind of that's my thoughts on it. I'm looking at it, watching these videos, and I'm sitting here thinking like, wow, like I could use this. Like my brain is percolating, but I still don't know how to get to that point of purchasing the units and having a tool for the people on my team to use.
Yeah, Anthony, so we did briefly discuss the HoloLens 2 last week, but now we've got a little bit more well-rounded views on like the specs and that kind of stuff. What do you think of this?
I mean, it looks like an awesome device. They've improved a lot. It's much smaller than it ever was, and the resolution is good. The field of view, see, the thing about the field of view is if you compare it head to head to Magic Leap, it's almost identical in terms of field of view. And like a lot of, like when we first heard about it, it's like, oh, HoloLens has now taken the lead. Now they've got a much bigger field of view than Magic Leap, and they're basically the same. But HoloLens has like the 21 points of articulation. That looked really good. That finger tracking, like one of the things that we didn't get to see, Gary, when we were doing our show, is they were doing all those demos on stage at Mobile World Congress. We had to watch that later. And I don't know, I mean, I'm assuming you probably felt the same way, but when I saw it later, I was like, wow, these demos are quite impressive, because they were doing some things. See, there's no haptics, right? Because you just have your hands and there's no sensations. But when one of the things that they were showing on stage is when you touch the holograms, they can make it so that they kind of light up exactly where your fingers are touching it. And then they might also, I mean, I'm kind of assuming here, but they might have some little audio cues as well. And that's a good way, like if you don't have actual haptics, if at the exact moment that you touch something, you get a little audio cue. It almost like works in your brain as haptics. And so they're doing some good stuff with that. Everything looks great. This is obviously not a consumer oriented product because it's too expensive. But HoloLens 3, they've already mentioned HoloLens 3, and maybe at that point they could start pivoting towards consumers a little bit. But the future looks bright. It's just we're 5-6 years away probably from like real consumer, high-end consumer AR.
Yeah, that's an interesting point about that you bring up about HoloLens 3 as well, because it seems I don't know why they would even mention it now, but they said that I think Alex Kipman said that it's only probably a couple of years away, the HoloLens 3. It seems very strange for them to even mention that at this point. And just before I pass it over to Chris, very quickly, I do want to get onto this point of the Road to VR. Ben Lang at Road to VR sort of analysed the announcement and this kind of stuff, and he came up with the conclusion that the actual visual demonstration that they had for the wider field of view of the HoloLens 2 is not really represented accurately, and it made it look a lot bigger than it actually is. And I did read that article, and it did seem to make sense. So it is a problem for them, I suppose, in some ways. But then after that article, and I don't know if it was a result of that article, Alex Kipman did sort of clarify the field of view with these figures that I mentioned earlier. But Chris, overall, anything you want to mention on those points, but also anything else in general with the HoloLens 2?
Yeah, like what all you guys said, I think it's just a really great AR device, and it's just so good to see a decent AR device out in the market, even though it's not for consumers in any way, shape, or form. You can start to kind of imagine the roadmap for it to get into consumers' hands, which is the exciting thing for me. Like, I'm like, wow, this hand tracking is really impressive. So if like anyone hasn't seen the videos on this stuff, like it is really impressive. Like they played a piano with all 10 fingers and it worked like flawlessly. So that's just the kind of cool technology that can transfer to potentially VR devices and future AR devices as well. So I think just building that groundwork is excellent in enterprise. It makes perfect sense because that's where the money's at too. But yeah, just going to this Road to VR article, they really did overstate how big the field of view is in the presentation. They kind of unwarped the image that was displayed in the background that would show like the HoloLens 2 versus HoloLens 1. And they made it look like the total FOV area was 5.2 times as big as the original, which is just way off. It's actually 2.5 times, which is still definitely a decent jump. But I remember, last week we were like, wow, the field of view is 70 degrees. Nope, not even close. But it's still a decent improvement. I guess it is like magic leap. But I'm just really excited for the finger tracking and some of the world sensing stuff. I think that could easily be transported to mixed reality too, whenever that could ever come out. This all kind of makes me more excited for that in the short term, but in the long term, I think AR will be ready. If the price keeps reducing like this every iteration, eventually it'll be like 1,000 and 500, and the field of view will be actually 70 maybe. And like I can start to see a world where this happens. So that's exciting, definitely.
Yeah, just quickly before we move on, thank you to Walking Infected and also Del Wolfensparger for their super chat donations. That's very much appreciated. But let's get on to the next news story. So this is to do with Walmart. They are selling now. It appears that they're selling some very, very cheap SteamVR headsets. When I first saw this news story, which was, I think it was broke on Upload VR, I really couldn't believe what some of the specs of these headsets. So basically, they have 3 models available. These are headsets that can be connected to a PC running SteamVR, and the first model is the cheapest. So this is a 960 by 1080 per eye, 60 hertz refresh rate headset for $20. Then we've got 1280 by 1440 per eye at 60 hertz for $30. Then we've also got a 1440 by 1440 per eye with IPD adjustment running at 90 hertz refresh rate for $45. These are all headsets that can be connected to a PC. They're only 3 degrees of freedom, but they do also come with a USB controller. I don't know how they can make any money out of any of this stuff, really. But so really, these headsets are designed to be connected to a PC, which is running SteamVR, and you can then play seated 3 degrees of freedom games on a controller, which is, by all accounts, a great deal. I think we need to, obviously, we've never tried these headsets. We don't know the quality of the lenses or the displays or anything like this. So there's still a lot of questions in the air. And very quickly as well, they are also selling a standalone HMD, which is running Android and uses a store called the Nibiru Store, the App Store. So the content probably will be quite limited on that. I'm not familiar with that App Store, honestly, so I'm not too sure what to say about that. But you know, these headsets, are they just ridiculously cheap for what they are? Even if the quality isn't good, they seem sort of ridiculous. Steve, I'll go over to you first.
Well, I mean, I don't know too much what to say. Like, I haven't tried one, and as cheap as they are, I'm not going to run out and buy one. So, the only thing is, I have a hard time imagining that the experience is really any good. And I guess the bigger question is for us here is, do we think a cheap product like this helps or hurts VR? I would land on the side of hurting VR if it's a very suboptimal type experience. Not so much about the 3DOF, because we have 3DOF and the Oculus Go, and in general we don't think that is a product that shouldn't exist or that it's somehow hurting VR. So I think the big question is, what are the lenses like? The lenses could be anything from complete trash to, good lenses, maybe. And then the display, is it low persistence, and is it going to look like a blurry, ghosty mess, even at the higher resolution? So the quality of the experience probably says everything. If one was in front of me, I would waste my precious time trying it, but I'm not going to go buy one just to try it. Even to buy it and return it to Walmart, I wouldn't even go through that process of trying it.
Chris, yeah, it can't be that bad, can it? Surely, if it connects to a PC and even if the lenses are pretty bad, no, I think it probably could be that bad, actually. Chris, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, it's a really interesting thing. I think it's cool that there's something this cheap that exists, but there's no practical use for something like this. I was reading the reviews while we were all talking about it, and someone said they actually prefer the screen to the Oculus Rift.
Oh my goodness.
It's more comfortable than their Odyssey because it's super lightweight. So that's kind of interesting. It sounds like the only model to get at all would be the 1440 by 1400 model, because that's the only one with IPD adjustment. The other ones apparently are really blurry just for most people. But I mean, this person said for games like Elite and stuff, like 3DOF is fine for them. That's kind of interesting.
It is.
I really want to try this thing just because I want to know. But it sounds like it's not the worst. Sounds like the standalone one is absolutely terrible, and like everything's broken about that. So don't go anywhere near that. But I mean, hey, if I had like $40 to spare, I'd be curious maybe. I don't know. It's a really weird thing. Obviously, I think it hurts VR in general. I think it's just a novelty thing for us to be able to try, maybe because it's so cheap. But yeah, if someone buys this, they're gonna have a terrible time.
I think the name of the company was it VTech or VR Tech or something like that? That's the actual brand. I don't know. Yeah. I forgot already. But at the 1440 by 1440 model with IPD, shots fired over to Oculus against the Rift S. For $45, you get an IPD slider. You better hope the Rift S has it.
I know.
Yeah. Yeah, I tell you that what though, if you've got just like a passing interest in VR and you'd sort of followed it for a while, but you'd never jumped into one of the more expensive headsets, I can entirely see somebody picking one of these things up and just seeing what VR is and seeing what it has to offer. Overall, going back to your original question, Steve, is this good or damaging for VR? Is another question. We'd need to try them, I suppose. Anthony, what are your thoughts?
Well, where's Linus Tech Tips when you need him? Because doesn't he always do shows on like this $40 Walmart PC or whatever? He always does those episodes, right? So you'd think this would be right up his alley. But you know what I was thinking is like, what if you were like, maybe you're not even into VR at all, but you know, there's these YouTube videos that you grab the video on your 2D monitor and you pull it around and stuff like that. And I would think like, if nothing else, if you just wanted to experience those kinds of videos, you could probably do that with this relatively decent. Like there's a lot of 3DOF material that's out there, 360 videos and prawn, what about prawn, so I think there is a market for something like this if it's halfway decent.
Yeah. Just before we move on to the next news story, I did want to highlight an email we received. I didn't make any notes on this, unfortunately, because it's just come back to me about the an email we received before we get into games a little bit later on. We did hear from somebody who said that it's always valuable to talk about the games that we talk about, but also highlight the name of the game before and after we talk about it. This is a constant frustration. The reason I'm sort of trying to wedge this into the discussion here is because it's a constant frustration for me where I listen to podcasts and they don't talk about the games. They don't mention the names of the games that they're talking about. So I just wanted to quickly mention while it's on my mind. Thank you for that email, whoever sent it. I'm just looking, I can't seem to find it, but thank you for that email. Because I think we'd all do well to try to acknowledge the games we're talking about. But let's move on to the next news story anyway before we get onto that. So this is okay, this is interesting. Now, this is really interesting. Anybody that has seen this trailer, Boneworks, I do want to talk about this. So Boneworks is by Stress Level Zero, a developer that made Hover Junkers. What else did they make? They made another game.
Duck Season.
Duck Season, that's right. Yeah. So these are sort of very well versed in terms of VR games. And they've made some great VR games. They've not had quite the success, especially with Hover Junkers, I think a lot of us would have expected from the early days of VR, unfortunately. But it was a great game, and so was Duck Season. But this Boneworks game is something they've been working on for quite a while now, and the trailer, I suppose, speaks for itself. This is a physics-based. It's not a sandbox. Now they have specifically stated that this is a game with a story that you can progress through. Very reminiscent of something. I think anybody that watches this trailer will say it's very reminiscent of something like Half-Life. But yeah, there's not a lot to say other than the fact that this trailer looks absolutely fantastic. I can't wait to give this game a try. Let me go to Chris first on this. I assume you've seen the trailer, Chris. What did you think when you first saw this?
Yeah, it looks so good. And like the Stress Level Zero guys, they really know what they're doing in terms of like physics and getting things to feel right. I remember back in the early days of VR, they were like the first people to figure out how to like have your gun like use your shoulder as another like point of contact so you can actually aim down the sight easier. So they really know how to do weapons and guns and things like that. So I think it'll just be super fun to try to play this game. I don't know too much what it's about from the trailer, but hopefully it'll have a cool story as well. Also, I watched part of their video when they were like kind of showing it off on one of their channels on Node, and they're using the knuckles, and like it looks so good with knuckles because all the fingers are tracking, and you can adjust your grip on different things, and you actually like physically can adjust your grip. So I mean, this game was definitely 100% made with knuckles from like the very beginning. You can tell like this is what it was for. So I hope Knuckles comes out soon because I think this game would just be a whole nother level with those. But yeah, it looks really exciting. We need a good physics game because there really aren't too many. It's really hard to get right, and it looks like they've just been trying to get this thing right forever. So I'm excited to try it.
The Knuckles thing is interesting as well because it entirely. They said they have actually come out and said that it's perfectly playable on standard Vive ones or the touch controllers. They said it's perfectly fine to play it with that, but they do really seem to be aiming this more towards like the Knuckles controllers when they come out. One of the most impressive parts for me when I saw this trailer, and it's a weird thing, it's a small thing almost, but like loosening your grip on a crowbar. And sliding your hands down into different positions and having the different leverage in terms of smashing objects or something like that. It just looks absolutely incredible. Anthony, what did you think of the trailer?
Yeah, I mean, it looks fantastic. This is not the first time we've ever heard of Boneworks. We heard of this a long time ago. Most of us forgot about it, myself included. But it was well over a year ago we heard about this. But it was basically at that time when they very, very, very first talked about it. It was more of like a physics experiment thing that they were doing. And way back then, they were saying, we don't know that this is even going to be a game, but we're kind of like screwing around with stuff. And then here it comes, a year or so later, we get this trailer and they've turned it into a full-fledged game. But I think what they did is they basically said, look, let's just experiment with all kinds of physics related things, experiment with like finger and hand interaction. And that's primarily what they were doing. And then at some point down the line, they thought, we could kind of turn this into some kind of narrative and some kind of interesting game. And when you look at the trailer, at one point I was going to say, Valve, you guys need to get your lawyers up and ready, man, because these guys are like, there's a lot of Half-Life, there's a lot of Portal, there's a lot of The Lab. You look at the trailer and it looks like, oh, that almost looks like it came right out of The Lab or Half-Life or Portal. But the thing is, Stress Level Zero, they're actually really tight with Valve. In fact, I think Valve has some kind of master list. I was reading about this somewhere, and unfortunately, I don't have the facts with me right here, but Valve has some type of master list of these different games that are listed. And the only non-Valve game that was listed is Boneworks. It's the only one. All of the rest are Valve. And then there's Boneworks listed. And it was in one of these Reddit threads where everybody was talking about Boneworks. And people were speculating, has Stress Level Zero been purchased by Valve? Does Valve have part ownership of Stress Level Zero? Is Valve funding this? Is Stress Level Zero making a future Half-Life game? Like all kinds of speculation is going on in some of these Reddit threads, but it's based on Boneworks being in this master list with only Valve titles. And so whatever the case may be, this looks like a possible Knuckles kind of a launch game. And this is coming 2019, supposedly. So spoiler alert, Knuckles, we're getting it this year. I mean, you'd like to think so, but I mean, because you would wonder if you did get this game and you were playing on like a regular Oculus Rift controller or a old Vive wand, how much of the experience is going to be watered down compared to playing it with Knuckles? But it looks absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, Steve, what are your thoughts on this? It's a pretty impressive trailer, isn't it?
Yes, it's a very impressive trailer. The physics, the handling of the weapons. I think one of you guys mentioned the hand sliding up and down the crowbar. It's obviously they focused on that, and I don't hide behind the fact that I will call out poor control, poor interaction. And it's one of my bigger pet peeves, for Anthony, his pet peeve is standing, even with a gamepad game. My pet peeve is control. And, I don't want to just be doing something for the sake of it. I don't like a gimmick in this sense. Looking at this does not look like it is a gimmick in any way. It looks legit interactivity, flexibility, physics. It looks like they have it really dialed in. So my interest, assuming this all works as well as they're showing, trailers can be deceiving. There's a lot of hype around this. This looks great. I hope they tie it into an interesting game. You can have a great physics demo, so to speak, great interactivity demo. And I think of a game like Job Simulator. Like that was an interactivity demo to me. It felt like a demo, and a lot of people love that game for the freedom that it is, and the on the fly storytelling aspect of it. But to me, it was just like glorified interactivity demo, and I'm hoping this game, whenever it fleshes out, doesn't go down that path. Like it's as cool as a sandbox can be. I imagine I'd be bored with it after an hour or so. So I hope they take this sandboxy looking physics demo and stretch it out to a excellent narrative game. And they describe that on the Steam page. It says a narrative something game. I don't have the quote written down, but they do make reference that this isn't a sandbox, physics, glorified physics demo, that it is a game. So I look forward to it, and everybody in the community's hype on it based on this trailer. Just here in chat, everyone's been saying, "Yay, Boneworks talk," and I wish I could try something like this out. And Gary, you mentioned that they've said that it's going to be compatible with the wands, and I guess it'll be compatible, but like just looking at it, I don't see how the wands in any way will give the sort of interaction that I'm seeing in this trailer. Like the touch, even, I don't know that we'll be able to do it, but we'll be far better poised than the wands are. So it looks like Knuckles is going to be key for the optimal experience on this game.
Absolutely, yeah. It seems primed for Knuckles as well. And I do wonder if the developers have got any insight into when these Knuckles controllers will be eventually released to consumers. I suppose, I think anything that I've seen in the trailer, when I was watching the trailer, I was trying to look for anything where it wouldn't be possible with the touch controllers or the Vive ones. And I think specifically with the touch controllers, even like the part where you're holding the crowbar, you could sort of release the grip slightly on one controller and slide your hand down and that kind of stuff, because they are analog grip controls. You do have that freedom with it, but it's not going to be the same. It's just not going to be the same as from everything we've seen from the Knuckles controllers anyway. Okay, well, let's get on to the last main news story we've got down here, and this is to do with the HTC 5G hub. So this is a new story that came out, and it's very early days with this thing. But the 5G hub is something that eventually will probably get into in our homes, and it uses the 5G network and could allow the potential for streaming cloud-based edge computing rendering for VR content, with HTC-based headsets, I suppose. It's interesting because I think a lot of this is the way things are going. We already know, like with 5G. So let me make it clear. There's a lot of hype about 5G at the moment, and we're going to be seeing mobile phone handsets coming out within the next year. Or I think, in fact, there are some mobile phones available with 5G capability now. Some of the smaller manufacturers are already going in that direction. But during the next sort of year, 18 months, we are going to start seeing some of the bigger manufacturers doing these 5G mobile phones. And as the infrastructure of 5G gets rolled out, that's great. That's great for mobile phones. There's a difference, though. There's a difference between the infrastructure of simply having 5G as a delivery mechanism, but also there's a need in terms of what is the more interesting aspect of 5G, which is the cloud computing, the cloud edge-based computing aspect of 5G, which means you can render stuff in a server, like a warehouse filled with servers, and then it will be sent to whatever device you want to view it on. And that's the more interesting part, and especially it's relevant for is VR enthusiasts, because standalone VR headset with 5G capability of receiving this data could possibly have this ability to not have any local device, no PC or anything like that, and yet still get the fidelity of that device streamed over 5G networks. It's an interesting thing that they are trying to do here. It's still a way off. I don't think 5G as in itself is necessarily a long way off, but I think the infrastructure behind having sort of cloud edge based computing as a delivery mechanism for this is still, it's a long way off. But there's two sides to this coin. Anthony, we talk about 5G a lot, and I think there's a lot of hype around it. But when you combine it with the fact that it could do cloud based computing, VR rendering, it's interesting, isn't it? If we could get to that point.
Yeah, the cloud, the whole cloud thing, man, I don't know, because you're talking about a warehouse filled with all these like high-end workstations that are like delivering you this incredible experience. who's paying for this, you know? Because doesn't the individual workstation that is this incredible super powered PC, right? That is delivering you your experience. That's one PC that is delivering you one single experience. Who is paying for this? Where are you getting all of these PC? Like, is the idea that they're going to have these warehouses filled of all these PCs that can deliver this experience, but only so many people are going to be playing games at any one given time that it's all going to work out. It's kind of like the idea of Comcast back a few years back. Like when you got Comcast for your high-speed internet, what happened was if you were using it at like noon, you're great. You know, everybody's at work and you got great speed. And then when everybody gets off work and everybody jumps online, it's like this shared bandwidth thing. And then your speeds drop dramatically. And so I'm trying to figure out how does this, the whole cloud thing, I've heard so much talk about cloud for so many years. Like Crackdown 3, where's Crackdown 3? Is it even out on Xbox? I don't know. I'm not a flat gamer, but like,
Yeah,
remember, it is out? Okay.
Yeah, it's out
so
now,
like,
yeah. I don't know if it's using the cloud though.
Well, the cloud was supposed to create all these incredible explosions and all of that. But you know, one little side rant about 5G and VR, because I don't know if you guys saw this. Was it maybe at Mobile World Congress they had a Spider-Man demo? Okay, so there was a Spider-Man demo that was running on Oculus Rifts, and it was Intel, some other, it was like 3 different companies, but I know Intel was involved, Oculus was involved, Sony was involved with Spider-Man, and they were doing like the first ever 5G multiplayer experience running on Oculus Rifts. And I'm banging my head, literally banging my head against a table saying, what is going on here? That is so, like, is the 5G just delivering the internet access? Is that what because it's not delivering cloud computing to these Oculus Rifts. I don't personally believe that. And they never said that in the article. So I think it's funny because you'll read articles all over the internet where they're talking about 5G, 5G, 5G. But when you look through the article for like the actual details, you never get any details. It's just people talking about buzzwords. And then when you go to all these convention centers, for example, Mobile World Congress, right? They're saying we couldn't do an actual 5G experiment because the Mobile World Congress convention wouldn't allow for that. So we ran fiber optic cables. So it's all simulated anyway. Like it's not even real. Even when they did the 5G tests in Honolulu, Hawaii, a while back, it was a big 5G thing. Even that was simulated because I'm kind of turned a corner on 5G. I was like a big supporter of 5G. I thought, yeah, 5G, this is the future, because I think it's a future more from 360 video being streamed to you that is incredibly high resolution, like 6 DOF video. That's what I think 5G is going to be huge for, not for actual cloud computing. That's like 20 years away. I'm not really buying into that. But like actual 6 DOF video where you can kind of move around a little bit and you're in a video and it's super high resolution, that is where 5G can actually matter, because we can't download 3 terabyte files, you know, but that could be streamed to us with 5G.
I think that there's a difference in this as well, because 5G is not just bandwidth. You've got it's the latency that's the main part of this equation for us as VR enthusiasts. And again, I'll go back to my point. I think there's 2 sides to this. You've got the 5G infrastructure, and then you've also got the infrastructure based around cloud computing. Both of these things need to come together in order to deliver what we want. So, Chris, let me go over to you next. Now, taking all of these, because we've had a few comments like Greg's VR, I think he mentioned, 5G, blockchain, and all of these buzzwords around. And I understand there's a lot of hype around all of these things. But let's take all the terminology out of it, Chris. And just, if you had a VR headset at home a standalone VR headset that could just get beamed wireless data, and it would be almost imperceptible from the difference between having a tethered headset to a PC, or that kind of stuff. Would you want that? Surely you'd want that kind of stuff, whether, because this is the promise of 5G, whether they deliver it or not. And I understand Anthony's skepticism on it, but assuming they could deliver this kind of stuff, everybody would want that, right?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know what I'm looking at with this article, because like, what's a 5G hub versus a 5G network? Like, is this just kind of like an internet connection thing? Is this a router?
We've mixed it. So the HTC 5G hub is just a hub. It's like a 5G enabled router with some features. And yeah, we should probably separate our HTC 5G hub discussion, which really isn't much to say at this point. We're just talking about 5G from the theory of 5G and what it means to VR.
Okay, so they're different. Okay, yeah, because I was like, that's one thing. If we have like a good enough Wi-Fi router that can stream VR from our computer to our headsets, I think everyone would want that. So if HTC comes out with a product that did that, that'd be fantastic. This is just weird because HTC's kind of trying to say it's both or something. It's really weird.
Let me just, because on that point, because with this 5G hub, I assumed it to be a hub that you put in your home, and it's receiving 5G data from a 5G tower, a few miles away or something like that. So it's not there's nothing connected to this in terms of wireless. And then that hub is then potentially feeding a standalone VR headset with that 5G data as well. Is that correct?
Yes, think of this as the wireless router you would have in your house, but instead of it plugged into your network, your internet provider, whether that be a company like Comcast or your DSL or your fiber, it's receiving the radio signals from the 5G cellular network. Mm-hmm. So that's essentially all the HTC 5G hub is a hotspot essentially for 5G, and it's a nice looking product. It's got touchscreen. It's got the visual metrics. Just jumping in here, and I'll try to unpack it as the way I understand it. If you consider standalones, and a lot of companies, Oculus and HTC, and I imagine a lot of other people are going to start playing in the space, but standalones is where they think the future of VR is, breaking away from the PC, breaking away from Windows and all that noise. But we know these mobile chips can't provide the fidelity that's desired. So the idea is that if you can offload the computational processing and do it in a server farm somewhere, whether that be, to Anthony's point, in a warehouse on the other side of the country, or even just your local PC in your house, and you can establish that internet connection, then the idea is that you then have the power of a workstation, but the benefits of a standalone device. Now, I agree with Anthony for the most part, in that I'm skeptical that this is anywhere near around the corner in terms of being able to do real-time, latency-free, high-fidelity VR. The bandwidth is there. So when we think of internet connections, we think of that throughput, how many megabits a second, gigabytes, whatever. I have a 1 gig fiber connection here in my house. But in this case, it's the throughput is important, but the latency is also critical. And I'm not sold. Now, I do believe in cloud computing. I personally use cloud a lot for file storage. I mean, hell, we use it here on VR Roundtable, when we create our show document. So cloud computing is a very valid and real thing. I just think it's quite a far way off to be able to game in VR in real time. I'll believe that we are around the corner when I see flat games doing it at a higher fidelity without the latency. And as far as I know, and someone in chat can chime in and tell me I'm wrong, but as far as I know, no service is being able to do it really well in the realm of flat gaming. And if they can't do it in flat gaming, if Mario doesn't jump, 10 milliseconds after you press the button, then I don't see it happening for VR anytime soon.
Well, 10
So
milliseconds is an interesting point actually, because I think
I
that's
just
what
made
they're
that
aiming
number up.
for.
I just
No,
made that number up.
I think they are aiming for that, and especially with AR as well, they're sort of aiming for 10 milliseconds as being the magic number to get like cloud AR as well. Chris, did you want to jump in as well?
Yeah, I think it's all good in theory. I think long before we have 5G outside our house that beams into the 5G hub, like it should work with fiber. Like we should be able to stream, VR if we have a fiber connection in two buildings and like we can transmit it in one and like access it in the other. We shouldn't even need to go wireless yet. Like as long as we can confirm that works, then we can confirm, okay, we could do this wirelessly. But I haven't even seen that even close to confirmed by anybody. So like to me it's like a far off future, but I think a lot closer is just, having some sort of 5G router that we can stream like SteamVR or something to a standalone headset. Like that seems totally doable, but this 5G network stuff, that'll take like forever. And like you said, Steve, I don't think anyone has even done flat gaming right yet. I know Nvidia tried like a while ago, and I tried it many years ago, and it just had like a half-second lag to it, so I stopped playing it.
And if you look at the, going back, I don't know, 10-ish years, with, what was it, Gaikai, there's lots of companies, like this was 10 years ago, 8 years ago, somewhere in that time frame. That was the future. There was so much conversation about being able to stream your games. You carry around a $50 magic box and it streamed whatever high fidelity game you wanted to play over the internet. And that hasn't really happened in a mainstream way. And I know people are working on it, and I know it's improved immensely during that period of time. But just for example, like, I have a Steam Link. I bought one of the Steam Links when basically Valve gives them away during the Steam sales for like $2 or something stupid cheap. I bought one and I tried to play a game on my home network, and the latency is even there on my home network. And I have a prosumer grade switch. I separate my switch and my router. Like I would call myself an advanced consumer when it comes to home networking and the tightness of my network. And just over my network, the latency from my computer to the Steam Link, all over wire, no wireless, was still present. So I'm not convinced that this stuff is around the corner. We got we've polarized chat to a degree. There's people in chat that agree with us and people that disagree with us. And user Onakazi, he actually brought a good point earlier, and we haven't even touched on it because we're still talking theory so much. But here in the States, most people's mobile plans are still bound by data caps and all this. Like, you can't tell me that 5G is going to do a lot and I'm going to still be bound by a 5 gig or a 10 gig data cap. Like, I don't know if the same applies to you over there in the UK, Gary, but there's so much that needs to flesh out before people can just blindly use mobile data with no care at all to how they're consuming that data.
Yeah, no, I agree, and there's so many points to hit on here because we are getting quite some interesting comments in chat as well. But with the data cap, when we went from 3G to 4G on mobile phones, data caps just went up. At least they did over here in the UK. You just had more data for the same money. I hope that will happen with 5G because somebody's got to pay for this, and I know the consumer won't take to 5G if it's not cheap enough. But so latency is an issue. Now what I'm talking about with latency, now that 10 millisecond latency is literally a round trip. So when you move your head in a supposed future where we have 5G headsets, you need no more than 10 milliseconds latency before that sends it to the 5G hub, sends it to the data center, gets computed, sends it back to the hub, and then beams to your headset. It shouldn't be any more than 10 milliseconds. Now, this is for AR. It needs to be less than 20 milliseconds for VR, I believe. And, I'm interested to hear people's comments in chat because this is all I've heard. Because I'm so interested in the future of this. This is sort of the future I want. I don't want to necessarily have a PC. I would love to just rent or pay a subscription fee to this kind of thing where we can all have fantastic VR experiences and we just pay a subscription fee. And it's the way consoles are going. And somebody did mention in chat as well about the Google streaming, which is going to be, I think they've sort of made allusions that they're going to announce some more on that with GDC. But everybody that's played that, which is flat gaming, which is to your point, Steve, everybody that's played something like certain games, it has to be certain specific games which don't rely too much on latency, I guess, but something like Assassin's Creed, which is what they demoed with this Google streaming thing, it works absolutely fantastically. So I wonder if we are moving in that direction anyway. VR, yeah, I agree with pretty much what everybody else has said. I concur that the fact it's a long way off, we're not around the corner, and I'd say, you know, at least minimum 3 years. I think somebody, Del Wolfensparger asked, yeah,
he works for Sprint. No,
I think I do think it's a future, and I want to be clear on my position that it's not that I don't think this is going to happen. Right now, if I look at the cloud, like Netflix, that's cloud-based. They have a server farm that's feeding millions of people video content. I'm a subscriber to Apple Music. Other people do Spotify, Pandora, whatever. Like the idea like of loading MP3s onto my phone, like that I don't think that way anymore. I tell Siri to play a song and just magically it starts playing. So the cloud is the future. That is going to happen. I just think we're going to see it happen for flat games in a mainstream and a reliable way before I think we're going to see it for VR. Like VR is a whole nother hurdle over 30 frames per second flat games. And you know, I hope we get there and that'll really feed into the standalone market beautifully. But yeah, I think it's a little bit.
Well, think about the wireless adapters that we have right now. Like the wireless adapters that we have right now work for the current level of VR that we have right now, the resolution of current level VR. And so like Del Wolfensparger is talking about 2 to 3 years, this is all going to happen. But 2 to 3 years, are we going to be playing the resolution VR games that we're playing right now? No, we're going to be at a higher resolution. We got these 2160 by 2160 per eye headsets coming maybe later this year. We're going to keep pushing that. And then so you're telling me you're going to stream that at 90 hertz for each individual eye, and it's going to have like imperceptible hiccups.
Well, I think like things like foveated compression will come into the play where they're going to find ways to reduce that total bandwidth needed. Like, so it's twofold. I think we'll have improvements in efficiency in the data stream, the data packet size, while also improving the throughput and the latency of the data stream. So I think it'll happen from both sides. You know, now I don't think they're going to be streaming raw, DisplayPort video streams like what is going over the cable to our headsets today. Yeah, no way. Like even locally, TPcast struggled with that, and the Vive wireless adapter had to resort via DisplayLink to a compression model in order to pull that off, just local streaming, much less, you know, cellular network streaming. So I think the magic there will be in compression technologies.
Yeah. Interesting discussion. I think we could stay on that for a little bit longer, but let's move on. So we've got a couple of little topics here. The first one is the impressions of the StudioForm Creative strap. So this is a head strap which is designed for the Vive or Pimax. Is that correct? Who put this news story on? Because I don't know anything about it. Okay, Steve, over to you.
So so we had the maker of the strap. He sent me 2 straps, one for the Odyssey and one for the Deluxe audio strap for use with the Vive or the Pimax. Naturally, I'm using it with the Pimax. And what this is this is a strap that you basically, let me grab my Odyssey here and kind of show people. But basically what it does is I've got to do this backwards. It's hard. My cable's in the way. But it straps over through your earphone piece with Velcro, just like this. And what it does, it creates a top cushion for your head to rest in, and it makes wearing the VR headset a little bit like like wearing a ball cap. And what it does is it changes the distribution of weight. And it just, it's soft and super comfy itself. But by changing the distribution of weight, you just get a more comfortable experience. And we know here lately over the last 6 months with the Odyssey Plus and the Pimax and or at least I've learned, I shouldn't say we know, I should say I've learned during this time period that so much subjectivity is in people's face shape, head size, IPD, like all this stuff kind of comes into play. And there is going to be no one size fits all for any VR headset. So I think for the time being, we got to really embrace customizing, whether that be customized facial interfaces or aftermarket products like this strap. So the strap, I'll put a link to the storefront in our description here later today, but it's StudioForm Creative. They make it's $28 for the deluxe audio strap. So if you have a Pimax with a DAS, or if you have a Vive with a DAS, for $28 you can buy their Apache strap, and it does everything that I've described. They also, for $28, they have an Odyssey strap. And then they also had, and I haven't tested this one, for $25 they have a non-deluxe audio strap version for people with the original Vive strap. I haven't tried that one, and I'd say the gains between the Odyssey strap and the deluxe audio strap. Boy, this is becoming a tongue twister. But between those two, the Odyssey version had more improvement for me. Like both were improvement, but the Odyssey, I guess, it had more room for improvement, and this helped pull the weight kind of away from the face, because when I use the Odyssey, I use another mod to bring the head of the headset itself of the Odyssey in closer to my face. So for $28, guys, like this is, I truly recommend it. I mean, it's cheap. It's cheaper than a lot of games that we talk about. So your mileage will vary naturally, like if you got a different size head than me. So I can't say that this will be a dramatic improvement for any one particular person, but I think for most people that this will be an improvement. And for the low cost of $28, it's, in my mind, it's a no-brainer. So I just kind of wanted to talk about these. Not a lot of people are talking about them. It's circulating, I think, more in the Pimax forums, and the guy who started this up, he is in the Pimax forum. So, but I think, it should be pushed out more into like the Windows mixed reality subreddit and stuff. More people should be talking about this because it's so cheap and because it improves the comfort by a good margin.
Yeah, it does look. Just looking at the pictures of this, it does look pretty comfortable. Yeah, I'm pleased this thing exists. So we've got some photos of the Pimax. So I mean, the Pimax head strap. One thing I wanted to ask you, Steve. Supposing I eventually do get a Pimax, what's the standard head strap like on the Pimax? Is it absolutely, is it waist space?
It's a lot like the original Vive head strap. Like you'll want to get away from it pretty quickly. But the Vive Deluxe audio strap works real well. Conrad Lawrence has asked if it's easy to adjust. Well, once you set it, Conrad, there is no adjustment. You just put it on and you adjust your headset as you normally would. So there is no, the Velcro and the positioning is for you to get it sized to your head initially. But once you get it set, there is no adjusting it. So, it has no additional friction beyond that initial setup.
Okay, well, let's go back to you, Steve, actually, because the next little topic we've got down here before we get onto some games that we've been playing is the history of the future yet again. So we spoke about this a few weeks on the trot, so it won't stay on it too long. But I think it's interesting to get a few people's impressions on this book because it's definitely worthwhile reading. But Steve, you weren't on last week's episode, so what do you think of this book now you finished it?
Well, so this is hard. Like I want to be conscious of audience saturation on the book, because we could cover it a lot, and I personally find it very interesting, and I know you do as well, Gary. So I just I don't know that I will strike that, or that we will strike that appropriate balance in talking about it too much, but I did finish the book, and I think of it as in two modes. One is, you can describe the book itself, and and about that is the literary nature, whether you think the writing was good or bad, or all that, and then there's the information that we learn from the book, the info dump, and I think that has tremendous value, and stuff that over, when the time's right, we kind of reference some of that information. But my take on the book itself, so it's written from a very pro Palmer Luckey perspective, and that's the narrative that Blake wanted to get into. I kind of look past that, and I don't know if you feel the same way, Gary, but I look past that aspect of it, because there's no right or wrong. Like, for example, earlier in the book, when Palmer was first starting to meet with Nate Mitchell and some of the other guys, Blake described the mental process of how he went into choosing his proteins at a Chinese restaurant, and like it made him sound like this big genius, the way he mentally broke down and rationalized choosing 2 proteins instead of 1 protein. Like, I consider that kind of stuff fluff, and when I think about it from Blake's perspective, he's writing a book not specifically just for us. He's writing a book that mainstream consumers would hopefully enjoy reading. It's got plenty of tech in it, but he's got to make it interesting, or else it will read like a wiki page, and that's just not enjoyable for a lot of people. So I get why he kind of goes down that path. I look past it, and it doesn't bother me too much, because I feel like I can isolate that narrative from the truth, which is what I personally care more about. So there's lots of, and I can't get into all of those tidbits, but the one thing that stuck out the most for me out of this book in terms of information is there towards the end of the book, and I guess it's technically a spoiler, but it also was real life, so I don't know if we can spoil it in a true way, but at some point, Palmer and Jason Rubin were talking about a hack to get low-level access on the Vive just prior to OC3. This is before the whole Palmer controversy broke down and all that. And basically what they were going to do is, we a lot of people argue and say that Oculus is the bad guy because they have a closed ecosystem and they don't give official support to the Vive or to anyone else. And then conversely, the Valve is the good guy because they give official support. What's really at play here is Valve is not running Oculus SDK. Valve is doing a wrapper just like Revive is. Valve wrote a driver for Windows MR. So what's really, this is sort of like a Cold War, United States and Russia. This is a Cold War between Oculus and Valve for SDK. This is Oculus SDK versus OpenVR SDK. And what Oculus wanted to do was basically they wanted anybody using their storefront, they want them running the Oculus SDK, and for good reason. Because if you're running the Oculus SDK, you get asynchronous space warp, you get dash, you get all of those benefits. And I guess what I'm saying here with relation to the book, we learned that despite the narrative that Oculus was evil and closed garden, walled garden ecosystem, that they wanted to support the Vive natively, and that they claim, and I don't know how true this is, they claimed that Valve acted to stop them. So what they were going to do is then they were going to hack low-level access, get Oculus SDK running on the Vive, and announce it at OC3, which would have publicly put Valve in a position where Valve couldn't walk it back, or no longer Valve would be the good guy. So I found that aspect very, very interesting. It wasn't something that I knew played out that way, because even myself sort of bought into that Oculus is evil, Oculus is closed garden mentality versus good guy Valve with the open ecosystem. So Gary, I don't know. I don't want to just continue to monologue here. Like, what did you think of that section?
Yeah, no, I agree, and because we've spoken behind the scenes about this, and I think there was this narrative, especially towards the beginning of VR, where like the consumer VR, where everybody was saying like Oculus is a closed platform, they're not allowing the HTC Vive on board or anything like that. But as we progress through, and I think most people understand within the last year or so that there was a conflict of interest with Oculus. I mean, Oculus really did want the Vive to work with their store, but they were being blocked by Valve because they insisted on any headset that was going to download content and be natively supported by their store, it had to use the Oculus SDK because they perceived that as being the best SDK and to give the best experience. That's where Valve blocked it. So they said, and it makes sense. We've had this going on for a while now. And Palmer Lucky's alluded to it for a long time as well. I remember a post from him where he was talking about we would love to natively support any HMD with the Oculus Store as long as it uses the Oculus SDK. But there are third parties that would try like to prevent that. And it doesn't take a genius to understand why they would do that. So that was sort of a direct dig at Valve, I think, at that point. The most interesting point, which I didn't realize in this book, is that they were working behind the scenes to actively go around Valve, official support and actively hack the Vive at a low level in order to get it to natively support the Oculus Store. That was never apparent. I've never heard anything even close to that before, and that's really interesting to me. There's a lot to say on this, and Steve, while we're on this, because we could carry on. I think we could talk about this for an hour. This book, but I'm suggesting maybe we should do like an extra episode at some point just to go through some of these things, because we have spoke about this book for several weeks on the trot. And, if Chris and Anthony get to the point where they've finished the book, and then maybe we can do like a special bonus episode on it, because there's so many things to discuss on it.
Absolutely. I agree with that. And Chris, Anthony, have you guys got the book yet? Have you started? I know where your passions are in VR. Obviously, you're here spending your Sundays doing the show with us, and so I know you care a lot about it. I can't recommend this book enough. For people that are in VR, it's a no-brainer. I would recommend it over Ready Player One in the sense of it having information and things that are real rather than a fictional fantasy land of VR depicted in the future.
I have not bought it yet. Books for me are usually if I'm going to go on vacation somewhere, I might buy a book and take it with me on vacation, and then I kind of bring it with me. So I just haven't gotten around to it yet. Yeah,
and I've started reading through it, so I just gotta get through it because it is a great book. It's really fantastic. So we should plan that soon.
Yeah, I think so. I think it would be a great little bonus episode. Honestly, there's so many interesting little tidbits in that book. Okay, well, let's get on to a few games that we've been playing. So on the show notes, I just noticed we've got something to do here as well, Steve. Did you want to talk about this now or afterwards?
I'll just sprinkle them in for the people. Okay. I forgot as well.
Okay, so yeah, basically Steve is going to be sprinkling in a few codes for a few keys for Dick Wild 2 into the chat, so anybody can pick those up. But let's go on to the first game that we've got to talk about. I tell you what, I'm going to skip one actually. I wanted to get onto Final Assault first, if everyone is okay with that, because to me this is one of the most significant titles we should talk about this week. Final Assault is by Phaserlock Interactive, and this is a beta. It's not quite yet out yet, but it's worth talking about. I tell you what, let's go over to Anthony first on this one. Final Assault, what did you think?
Yeah, so the thing about Final Assault, we heard about it a long time ago. It was supposed to come in February, and then it got pushed back to April. And I started hearing about the beta, everybody talking about how they're in it, and people just ranting and raving about it. Even though they're not really supposed to say anything, but you hear little whispers here and there, people ranting and raving about it. And I've never been an RTS guy. I did play Brass Tactics really enjoyed Brass Tactics, even though that's not my genre. I also really enjoyed Tabletop Gods. Like, really impressed with the bottom line is what we've learned. Real-time strategy games and VR, these two things were absolutely made for each other. I mean, it more than maybe any other genre, even more than wave shooters and horror games, it's like the perfect marriage. I think if you took any flat gamer that is a real-time strategy fanatic and you put them into Brass Tactics, Tabletop Gods, and Final Assault, they're never coming back. You know, they are going to buy a VR headset. They are going to be lost in VR. And so I finally went in there yesterday because I knew you guys were going to be talking about this. And I felt like I had to get in it and try it out. And you know what? I suck at these things, but damn, I was in there for like an hour and I was just marveling at everything that was going on. I've talked many times about being a little kid and being in my living room. This is kind of like where I'm kind of excited about AR because everybody's like, I don't see what AR could do for video gaming. But for me, it's like, well, you could sit in your living room and you have a war happening right there in your living room carpet, you know, and that's kind of what you have here. It's like Army Men. It's like the old days of Army Men on your living room carpet as a little kid. But the thing is now, with your hands, once you learn the controls of this game, and I don't know if you guys struggled with this a little bit because you're using the trigger, you use the trigger to point at like your airplane and draw where you want it to go. But then the grip button is like raising up your table or moving you around. Now, I had a problem for the longest time of accidentally hitting both of them at the same time and getting really discombobulated, like accidentally move. I'm like trying to steer this plane over here and I'm accidentally moving myself farther away and stuff. So I had to kind of get to grips literally with the controls in terms of separating them. But once you figure out the way the controls work, it's just a simple thing to be in there. You guide your planes around. One of the problems I had with the planes too is like you'd have all these troopers, right? Enemy soldiers that are coming down the road, the dirt road, headed towards your base, and your plane is flying around. And so what you would often do, well, at least what I did, is I would point to my plane and I would just immediately point to those soldiers. But the thing is, I realized after a while that that didn't work very good because what would happen is the plane would dive bomb and try to shoot a couple of them, but you got to give the plane room to make its situation happen. So really what you do is you grab your plane and you wing it around like this and then bring it back and then down, you know? And then once I started to figure that out, it changed everything. And I started to get into this situation where I basically had the Luftwaffe or whatever, you know, it was just, I had like 9 planes that were just flying around and I was just taking my planes everywhere around the map and just trying to get a little bit further and further down the map. But my biggest problem with all these kinds of games is there's just so many things going on, and I will be in one little area of the map and I feel like I'm doing great. Yeah, I finally figured out what's going on. I'm doing great. I'm doing great. And then meanwhile, my base is just getting ransackled, and I'm playing it on the easiest difficulty. Like I'm just playing single player against the computer, and I'm barely surviving. So I'm not good at these games, but damn, do I like them and enjoy them. And they are fun. I got to get my kids to try this game because I think if they were to give it a little bit of time, I think they'd really fall in love with it as well.
Yeah. This so when I first went into this game, I struggled a little bit only because I played it initially on normal, and I struggled because I wasn't I wasn't doing the right things, and the tutorial guides you through, and I just struggled a little bit. But I played it just before we came on the show, and I had a better time. Not that I didn't have a great time, even when I was struggling with it. And I tell you what, if this game doesn't get somewhere on my Game of the Year list at the end of this year, then we are in for a fantastic year of VR, because this is one of my favorites of all time, honestly. And I've played not that much, but I can't wait to play more. If I wasn't doing this show now, I've got another hour free where I don't have anything on. I would definitely be playing this game now. It is really, really good. Steve, I'll reserve a few of my comments, but let's go over to you first on this.
Well, I agree. Like this really impressed me. It looks good and it performs real well. And the game is really fun. I can tell from about the first 60 seconds once I got into a battle that I was really going to like this game. Like, it was immediately obvious. I'm not going to repeat what you guys said, because it is a real-time strategy game, and it's military based, and you have tanks and artillery and troops and planes and all that. And I think the gameplay itself speaks for itself. One thing though, like if you compare this to, say, Brass Tactics, one of the things that I found different, like when I played Brass Tactics, I generally played seated, because the way you command your troops was more of a point. Like, you could say, hey, or your units, like your archers or whatever in Brass Tactics, you kind of position them with pointing, almost like a teleport node. This game, I play standing, because you have to reach more. You have to physically move more with this game. So you can't just point to where you want your unit to go, your tank or whatever it is. You have to actually go to where you want it and sort of touch that area. The airplanes, like, you can tell the airplanes to do a strafe run against a line of troops or something like that, but in order to do that, you have to, like, actually grab the plane and then drag a route onto the surface of the map for it to do that strafe run. So basically, to me, that's the big difference, is that you have to do more reaching, and you have to be more active in this real-time strategy game, which it brings a different feel to it, and it's fun. I question how, if some ways that slows you down strategically. Like, okay, I know I want to get an artillery unit over there, but I also want to tell this plane over here on this side of the map to strafe. Like, you have to then decide what you're going to physically go and do yourself as sort of the god or the commander of this virtual tabletop world. So, I thought that was just a very stark difference between, say, tabletop gods and Brass Tactics, and it makes for a different palette. I won't say that one method is better than the other necessarily. It's a different approach.
Yeah, to me, this game is a little bit more frantic than Brass Tactics, at least from the few matches that I've played. It feels more of a frantic game where you've got more to keep track of. And I think part of that is you can't just, like you mentioned, Steve, you can't just select a unit and point to where you want it to go necessarily. You have to direct them more in a direct manner. You actually have to point and move them around, especially the planes. It can sometimes be a little bit difficult, but really, I said I've got a few thoughts on this, but I think you guys have said it all, really. And I will probably reserve sort of commentary on this for when it's actually released, and I've played it a little bit more. But at this moment, the easiest comparison is Brass Tactics, of course, and I think this compares very well with that. Brass Tactics is one of my favourite VR games anyway, and this is so polished. Even the beta, it's so polished, and it's just a really, really good game, really enjoyable.
I've only played it for a few minutes, but I just wanted to butt in and say that it's even better than the trailers make it look, which is hard for a VR game. Like, you go in there and you're like, wow, this world looks absolutely incredible, and the controls are cool. I got to play a lot more of this. I think both of us do. So
yeah
It looks and runs really well in the Pimax too.
Oh, shut
Gary.
Oh no.
Okay, let's get on to the next game, Time Transit VR. Now, this is an interesting one, and one that I saw some trailers of, and I thought this looked really interesting based on those trailers and just sort of the comparisons I was seeing as well. Actually, Anthony, I think I must have watched one of your VR 365 videos where you were talking about this, and there was sort of the comparison you made to Robinson the Journey, which I think is an apt one, because it's sort of based in the jungle and you've got dinosaurs and things like that around there. But this is by Free Time Studio. The price is it's $34.99 and £27.79. So it's very much on the higher side of some games like this. But let me go over to, well, I tell you what, Anthony, let me go over to you first on this. What did you think?
Yeah, so I like it. It's cool, but the price is really high. I mean, it's hard to get around the price there, but basically it's more experience, I think, than it is a game. And dinosaurs in VR, how many times have we talked about dinosaurs in VR? We're 3 years now into VR, and we haven't really been overflowing with dinosaur games. We've got Island 359, we've got Robinson the Journey, there's Ark Park, and that's kind of it, really. And so this game, what it does is it basically takes you to these different time periods, and you kind of have a little helper guy that's kind of floating around with you, and you're just basically walking around everywhere. Teleport only at this point in time. There's no free locomotion, so you're teleporting everywhere, and you're doing a lot of climbing. In fact, you might almost be doing a little too much climbing. I got a little tired of the climbing after a while, but the visuals can be very breathtaking at certain points of this game. Like, you're in the underwater scene, that looks really cool. You get out into the forest, and it's like the California redwoods, and that kind of looks pretty sweet. And you get to see different dinosaurs that are running around. This also has a little bit of like Pokemon Snap in it. So you have this little scanner that you use where you can scan the different life forms, and then information will pop up. Now, I will say this, there's some serious problems with that scanner, because if you tried to scan like a dragonfly or anything that was moving around, you're scanning it for like 2 seconds and then it moves, you can't scan it. Or even like one of the small little dinos that are running around, you're like, stay there, come on, I can't scan you. And then even when you do scan it and it pops up this little information that you're holding, like a little sci-fi tablet that you have, it disappears really quickly. You're like trying to read this information or look at the 3D model, and it gives you a few seconds and then bam, it's gone. The developer of the game, Freetime Studio, they actually watched my Let's Play and they heard my comments about that, and they said we're going to try to make the scanning easier, and then also where it'll stay up longer so you can examine stuff a little bit better. But performance was a little bit spotty. I don't know if you guys noticed that, but I did have a little bit of some performance issues in some certain spots. And I would really recommend this if it was like $19.99. It's just hard at $35, man. $35, you can spend $5 more and you got like Asgard's Wrath or Defector or, a major primetime VR game. But it's pretty cool and impressive. It's got good sound, and I like exploring these kinds of things. I like seeing other time periods. We're still very far away graphically. Like, you look at the bushes and stuff and they're like flat textures, but it's still kind of cool. I like it.
Yeah, Chris, so you played this as well. What did you think of this?
Yeah, I absolutely loved this game. I played it for probably too long. That's why I didn't have that much time to play the other games this week. Just the graphics on this game are incredible, and like you said, Anthony, I was in asynchronous space where basically the whole time, so I was really running at 45 FPS on my 980. But just the graphics were absolutely incredible, and the music is so good. The sound is so well done. So like, you'd see a dinosaur and there'd be this really nice swelling music, and it was honestly like really beautiful and breathtaking a lot of the times. Like, I had my mouth just kind of jaw dropped a lot of the times, which hasn't happened for me in a long time with a VR title. So I was just kind of in awe of the terrain and like everything going on. And then it's kind of like Jurassic Park, where at some point things will go wrong and there's more puzzles and things. And I've kind of just begun that. I agree, there's a lot of climbing. The climbing is getting a little tedious at this point, but just traversing through this terrain and seeing these creatures is honestly like so cool. I think it could be, if it was $19.99, it'd be like an instant recommend for anybody. But even at $35, just something about it. It's so well done and so polished, and like, I love it. If you like exploration games, like, you should really get this. The graphics are really nice. So it's a big recommend from me. Like, I loved it.
Yeah. Steve, you've played it too. What did you think? What were your first impressions?
Well, I agree with you with Anthony and Chris. The game looks great. You know, Time Transit VR is from what I could see, that it has a bunch of different I don't want to say scenarios, but sections. At the beginning of the game, once you've played it once and you go back in, you can grab I think they call it a postcard, but basically it's a card off of the rack, and you load it into a machine and you jump. That's almost how you load your saved game. And so the way I'm viewing this at this point, without maybe not advancing far enough, is not so much as a narrative experience, but rather a sort of like a season of Planet Earth or something. Like the first episode takes place under the ocean, kind of in this reef, and you get to explore some of the animal life there and have that feeling of ambiance. Then the second episode takes place in this jungle-ish kind of area, and that's the way I'm seeing it. Chris, you maybe hinted at there being maybe some sort of narrative or story attached to it. So you have a series of tools at your waist, sort of. One is the scanner, which the other guys mentioned. I don't think they mentioned a camera. So you can take pictures. And one of the cool things when you take a picture in the game is that it at least in game, I don't know if you can explore the pictures out of game, but in game, it takes a picture with your left and right eye. So the little picture that it's displayed is in 3D, which is a nice little touch. I don't know if it was, a lot of work or anything for the developer to pull that off, but that was like a surprise. Like when I took my first picture, I was like, oh, well, that's kind of cool. So it's got some polish to it. I also had some hitches here and there that probably speak more to optimization and code rather than what it takes to really run this game. Graphically, it looks great. There are parts where you can kind of see the flat textures, but that doesn't bother me too much. I'd rather have a game be this densely populated with objects and scenery and have some flat textures than not, because I think it's a more pleasing appearance. All in all, I like the experience. I want to play it more. I think it works well for kids as well. You can put them in a postcard and let them just kind of sandbox it. And my kids actually expressed interest in wanting to try it out. The kicker, and you guys have already mentioned it, is the $34.99 price tag, the €27.79. That's a little steep. I would love to see the developer. Hopefully they see this feedback and they're able to knock some money off of it. I get it's sort of a catch-22. You don't want to give your profits and your hard work away, but finding that balance between sales and profit. It's hard to say it's worth 35. It's easy to say it's worth 20.
Yeah. I really like this too, but I think the price, I think everybody sits on it really. The price is probably too high for what it is. And it's sort of, as you progress through it, it sort of moves over to more like a puzzle game than just sort of exploring these environments. And there is a lot of exploring in the beginning, and then you get more into these little puzzles that you have to do. It's a good game, and actually I came on here really with the impression that I would wholeheartedly recommend it, but at that price it's just a little bit too high for me to do that, unfortunately. I really do like it, and not a lot to add. I think everybody else has covered it pretty well. Okay, well, let's get on to a game that we were gifted by MameFan. I don't know if MameFan is in chat today, but he gave us a key to Titans of Space 2.0. So this is an older title, and I remember playing Titans of Space. It must have been the original, the 1.0 version of this game, quite a long time ago. It was very much like a beta kind of experience from what I remember back then. But going into it now, Titans of Space it's sort of like an informative experience. So you travel around in this little pod, travel around the solar system, and see these very impressive sights, actually, of all the planets and the sun. But while you're progressing through it, you see all this information of each of these planets as well. It's a nice little title. I like it, and I enjoyed it even when I played it in the 1.0 version. So to experience the 2.0, it's a little bit more polished. It's still very, it's not double A or anything like that. It's very much a indie title, which is just very well done for an indie title. If you have any kind of interest in space or anything like that, or the solar system, I think it's worth checking out. Steve, you've played this too. What did you think?
I liked it. You know, I'm always a fan of educational stuff that gives me a nice visual treat alongside the education. One of my favorite things about VR is the really good 3D effect combined with kind of blocking you out from the real world. The 3D in VR is very different than 3D watching a 3D movie at the cinema or something like that. And I think that's probably the aspect of VR I like the most. And so being able to combine that, I really enjoyed Spheres and I enjoyed this. So once again, thanks to MainFan. For our emailer, the game we're talking about is Titans of Space 2.0. I want to repeat the titles a lot. But it is, we got to list it down. It's €5.59. We didn't write down the US amount with it, but around $7 maybe. It's good. It's about 20 minutes, so it's a little light, and I'm sure you can jump back in there. But one of the big things it does is it plays on the scale of space, and I find that very interesting because most people, myself included, have a difficulty understanding just how big space is and how minuscule we as people are and how minuscule really Earth is. So what this does is it kind of walks you through our solar system, and it gives physical comparisons to the sun, and it says, okay, the Earth is you could fit, I don't know, 1,400 Earths inside the mass of the sun. And it kind of just keeps making that scale reference all the way through. And it shows some other stars that what it would be like if our sun was replaced with some of these other stars that are much, much, much larger. One star our entire solar system can fit inside of. So it just, that whole playing of scale and being able to see that in the 3D stereoscopy within VR is pretty neat, and I thought it was a great experience.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was great. Chris, so I think you played a little bit of this as well. What did you think?
Yeah, this was a cool thing for me because I played the original Titans of Space on the Dev Kit 1. That's like what I showed my principal back in high school when I brought my Dev Kit 1 to school. I'm like, look, it's VR. So, I think this title is very similar to how it was back then. It was weird. It just felt like a more enhanced, like higher resolution version of that old memory I had from long ago of trying the original Titans of Space out. I think it's good they added basically just support for all the new headsets and motion controls and all of that versus the 1.0 version. And it looks like there's some sort of sandbox mode as well where you can kind of compare the sizes of different planets and things like that. I didn't get into that, but I did go through the whole tour again. And it's still like a really well done thing. It's definitely indie and could use, I think, a little bit more polish on the cockpit and areas like that. But it's a really unique experience that I think demonstrates the power of VR and education like perfectly. There's really, if you show this to somebody, they'll get what VR can do to education. So I think it's great. It's $7.99. I don't know if I would buy it personally at that price, unless I really wanted to learn more about space and everything. But as a cool homage to the past, it was really cool to go back into this.
Yeah, I think for that price, it's if you want to, it's like demo material and educational to show people the educational value of VR, I suppose. That's where it would warrant that kind of price, because it's very impressive. But I think it's more, it feels a little bit more of a year or a year and a half ago in VR where this kind of thing would have been more impressive, unfortunately. But it's still a title definitely worth looking into, especially if you have this kind of interest in space and the solar system. Okay, well, let's get on to, let's finish off here. We've got one more title we want to discuss, and I do want to get onto this because I'm interested to hear Anthony's further thoughts on LA Noire. This is a slightly older game, again, like Titans of Space, but LA Noire, the VR case files, came out a while ago. And Anthony, you didn't play too much because you had a lower spec PC at that time. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so back when it first came out, I mean, I had an Oculus Rift and I had a GTX 970. And in the very beginning, when LA Noire first arrived, like even if you had a really good PC, it wasn't working very good on the Oculus Rift right away. And then they did some patching and stuff, and it started to work better after a while. And then, but even then, I still have my 970. So finally, now I got a much better PC. I thought, oh man, LA Noire, I completely forgot about this thing. I'm like 2 years late to the party, but I finally tried it out. And I got to tell you, wow, just seeing. So there's the game itself. Like the game itself is okay. And I'm not really blown away by the game itself because it kind of goes through these different scenes and stuff. And you don't, like, I mean, it switches to different scenes where you got like a first person thing, you got a gun in your hand and you're doing some stuff. And then it goes through these detective scenes. But the part that I love is just to walk off the beaten path and just go walking through the city, because this is the closest we've ever gotten to Grand Theft Auto, in VR. We've got Skyrim, we've got Fallout 4. So we have open worlds. We've seen open worlds, but Skyrim is, like Lord of the Rings type stuff. Fallout 4 is in the future, and we don't have anything where it's a GTA kind of a game set in modern times. And this is 1940s Los Angeles, but that's interesting in and of itself, just seeing the cars drive by and the people, the way they're dressed, just like people walking down the street. And there's something really cool about walking around in VR. And I was walking over the overpass, okay? And I'm walking by these light poles, and the light poles are buzzing. There's electricity that's going to the light poles. They kind of have a buzz and a hum to them, and just the ambient noises of like dogs barking off in the distance, or like you hear like a siren or something kind of far away, or a car honking somewhere like blocks away, and then cars driving by, and then you just have like the regular pedestrians that are walking by, and they'll mention some weird dumb thing as they walk by you. But when they walk by you, they're the same physical size as you, and they say something and you're looking at them, and they'll walk by and you just kind of look at them and you're like, man, we're not that far away from where these games are just going to blow our minds. When these characters start to look so much better, and when they start to get imbued with AI, where they start saying some more interesting things, and they switch up the things that they say more, and then just the environments, I cannot wait. I mean, just playing this, it just makes me want Grand Theft Auto in VR so much more. And I think to myself, I think to like Facebook and all the money that they've dumped into all the various companies over the last 3 years, Twisted Pixel, Ready at Dawn, 4A Games. I think to myself, what if they just took all that money and just said, Rockstar, hook us up, because I really think of all the games that are out there that could potentially come to VR, I think Grand Theft Auto would be the killer app. I really do. Just that world, it is. And one of the weird things that you deal with LA Noire, and I had to deal with this, is like you're driving, so you're seating, and then you're walking around the city and you want to stand up. So you have to deal with this. And what I did was I had a chair right behind me. And so I would sit down for the seated, for the driving parts. And then I would just stand up for the walking around parts and kind of exploring the world. But every once in a while, I'd kind of bump into my chair a little bit. But yeah, it was really cool to get in there and just see. Here's the thing. I'm stuck in a puzzle. I haven't seen daylight where I could just walk around in daylight. It's been nighttime when I've been able to walk around, and I'm in this puzzle. I'm very super early in the game. You guys will know how early I am. I got to find a gun. There's a gun somewhere like in a back alley that I have to find. I haven't been able to find that gun. That's where I'm stuck, and I have not seen the daylight areas,
Yeah.
And in chat, I am Rhett says, just stand. No, I cannot drive a car and be standing. There's something about it that doesn't work for me. I got to sit down.
I think you get onto the daytime parts not too far away from where you are, Anthony. So if you carry on with that, you'll get to, and that was the part that hit me as well. And to go to what you were saying, like the GTA, that is really where it hit me. During the day, wandering around this city, I just went off and just wandered around, and you got all these NPCs wandering around. And I remember making this point when we first spoke about it, when LA Noire first came out, and it was just absolutely, that was like a pivotal moment. Like GTA in VR would be absolutely fantastic. As much as I love this game, it's not GTA, and that's the difficulty I have with it. And I've not gone back in. I've not gone back in for so long with this, and maybe I should go back in.
If they did GTA, if they brought GTA to VR, all people would do is complain that it wasn't made from the ground up for VR. They complain that when they walk up to a car, all they do is push a button instead of grab the handle to open the door and pull the door open and all that. That's what, because I mean, Skyrim's a big deal. Like it's, I don't know if Skyrim's as big as a game as GTA or whatever, but Skyrim's a big deal, and largely a lot of people love it. I love it, but it was complaint city as well.
Yeah, and
have you guys? I was just going to say, have you guys ever been tempted by like the Vorp X stuff with like every once in a while you'll see somebody talk about GTA and Vorp X or this special mod or that special mod. Have you ever been tempted by that?
I have it. I have Vorp X. I bought it, I don't know, a year and a half ago. And it works, but it doesn't, people think like thinking of Resident Evil 7, for example, it's a gamepad game. Vorpex doesn't feel like RE7 with a gamepad to me. A lot of people say it's exactly the same. There's hardly any difference. It felt different. Like the distortion, like a lot of the stuff was different because Vorpex is translating to VR something that wasn't made for it. And I don't think it gives it that RE7 gamepad effect. If it did, I'd be playing all the games, you know, because I'm cool with a gamepad. Like Alien Isolation, that's another example. The Alien Isolation mod is way and above the Vorpex experience.
These just on that point about games that are made for, because I agree. I think, Steve, what you were saying there about people just complaining about it being not made for VR from the ground up, and Skyrim got a lot of criticism, as you mentioned. I love it. It's definitely one of my favorite games in VR. But when I compare playing Skyrim to something we'll talk about in hopefully next week or the week after, I don't know, whenever we get opportunity to do so, Shadow Legend VR. Now this is the closest comparison. We can't talk about it yet, but this is sort of the idea behind it is the closest comparison to Skyrim. But it's a game that has been made for VR from the ground up, and I've got a lot to say about that game when we do eventually discuss it. But at the same time, and I stand by everything I think most of us have always said about this kind of stuff, the more games we get like Skyrim that are not necessarily made from the ground up for VR, but ported over with a certain level of development behind them, so they're not just Vorpex sort of conversions or anything like that. They have had some kind of effort put into them to transfer them over to VR. I think that's it's still an ongoing benefit to VR overall, because I would love GTA 5, even if it wasn't perfect, even if it had all of these problems. I still think that would still be a benefit to VR overall, really.
Think of the developers that made these games. They make so many little details, like on the streets, like just the signs, the advertisements, you know, the bus stops with the chairs that have advertisements on them. Just so many little details are everywhere. And when people play these games on a flat monitor, they see some of the details and stuff, but there's something else about being in the world and walking around yourself and just, it's magical, man. This is what VR was made for. And when I was walking around that city, I had another one of those epiphanies where I'm like, it's over. VR is going to kill everything. It will absolutely kill everything, as these old 1940 cars are driving by me and the pedestrians are walking by me, and I'm looking at the light poles and I'm looking at the advertisements and I'm hearing dogs bark a couple blocks away. It's like, it's over. It is so over. It's just a matter of time, baby. Man.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess that's pretty much it for this episode of VR Roundtable. If anybody else wants to add anything, then feel free to jump in. But thank you to everybody joining us in chat. Thank you to everybody watching the video after the fact. And thank you to everybody listening to the audio podcast as well. We do appreciate every view, every listen. And if you can leave a review or something like that, that would be great on any platform that you choose to do so as well. So I suppose that's pretty much it for this week, and we'll see you next week for episode 116 of VR Roundtable.
Bye.
Bye.